There is a lot going on in the NBA world right now. We have Popovich stepping down. We have Giannis, who potentially could be traded. We have teams getting sent home, like Giannis's team, but we also have some teams that have kept their dreams alive. And today, we're not going to focus on everything, but we will keep it simple. NBA second round playoff predictions. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into the predictions here today, we got to do two things. Well, one, I got to let you know, part one of this was recorded on Sunday. So some of these matchups, again, they're going to be behind, right? So hopefully my Cavaliers are up 1-0. But number two, we got to hold accountability, right? We were 3-1 in the play and 6-2 in the first round. So if this is your first time on the channel, I'm going to say we're not that bad. Let's kick it off here with my favorite team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, in a series that I think will steal the first round. They are hosting the Indiana Pacers, who, by the way, won the season series 3-1. But I will say this, you can't really look at the season series because, well, Halliburton missed some games. Donovan Mitchell missed a few games. All these stars on these teams missed a few games. And, of course, DeAndre Hunter was not really playing in any of them. So you can't really look at the regular season series. But when I look at these two teams, I look at, hey, the clutch time moments in the playoffs. Who's going to step up to the plate? Well, these are the two clutchest teams in the NBA. Based on percentage and points in the last 5 minutes of fourth quarters or overtimes, these two teams, despite not having that superstar level player, they know how to make those big time moments count. Now, the matchup to watch in this series is pretty simple. It's going to be Pascal versus Evan Mobley, the defensive player of the year. In the regular season, Pascal was averaging about 28 a game against Evan Mobley, which is typical Pascal numbers. But Evan Mobley, in this series, I want to see him become aggressive offensively, right? I want to see him step out and knock down the outside shot. I want to see him be able to not only defend Pascal Siakam and minimize his production, but also still get his in, right? Give us 18 and 10 a night, something along those lines. If Evan Mobley can do that, it should really shift in the favor of my Cleveland Cavaliers. When I look at these rosters, I will give the edge of the depth to Cleveland. But on the other side, of course, the head coaching advantage goes to Rick Carlisle, who has mountains more of playoff success over Kenny Atkinson as far as being a head coach. The thing that I wanted to look at in this series, and I guess the deciding factor for me, was the half-court offense. Because obviously both these teams, they like to get up and down, run, shoot a ton of threes. And ultimately, whoever makes the most threes in each of these games are probably going to win them. That's why this can go 6-7 games in favor of each team. But when the game slows down in those clutch time moments, I know both teams are great in those situations, but in the half-court setting, who can we rely on more? The Cavaliers have the number one half-court offense, while the Pacers have a bottom 10 defense in a half-court setting. Didn't matter much in the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks, but they're playing a much better Cleveland team here in the second. The last thing I'll note before I give you guys my prediction, Darius Garland might be out for the first game. If we win, he might be out the first two games. But ultimately, I'll say don't be shocked if Indiana grabs one of these first two games with the fact that, their pace of play and Darius Garland's out. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have the Cavaliers going 4-2 in a 6-game series. Now, when you look at the coaching staffs, both coaches have made it far into the playoffs in their own respective roles. I do want to say, as far as just strictly being a head coach, Rick Carlisle has done it a lot more and a lot better than Kenny Atkinson. But hey, this is really Kenny Atkinson's first real shot outside of Brooklyn. But when you look at this series on the court, I think it's going to come down to half-court offense. I think both teams have their own advantages in different ways. If Indiana has it going offensively, they can pretty much beat anybody in a 7-game series. And I mean that as a Cavaliers fan. Indiana's offense, when they're clicking, it might be the best offense in the league just because they get up and down, they run, and they shoot a lot of threes. And if they're making them, they can beat anyone. But when you talk about them being kind of at their plateau, right, their median, playing the offense that we've seen the Pacers play all season, this series is going to come down to half-court offense. And with the fact that the Pacers might not be shooting historically, I think the Cavaliers have a huge advantage. The Cavaliers have the number one half-court offense in the NBA per advanced stats, and Indiana, well, they have a bottom 10 defense in a half-court setting. In a playoff setting where the pace slows down and every bucket matters, the Cavaliers have a huge advantage in that regard. But again, Indiana won the season series. Who am I going to roll with in this matchup with a head coaching advantage? and maybe the overall experience as far as the roster goes to the road team, I'm going to go with my Cleveland Cavaliers. I think we're too deep, we're too ready. I do want to say that I think Indiana will win one of these first two games because the Cavaliers have yet to be tested in this playoff run. And we always see that some of these top dogs, once they're tested, they might not win those games where they need to immediately bounce back, unless you're the Thunder coming back down 29 points. I think the Pacers will win one of these first two games, but overall, I'm going to have the Cavaliers win a very tough and high scoring series 4-1. Staying in the Eastern Conference, Boston is hosting the New York Knicks, and they swept the season series, and it really wasn't pretty for all of those games. Boston has a top 5 defense and a top 5 offense coming into this postseason. And honestly, with all their injuries and with their roster not being consistent, they're still not at their best, and that is a scary sight to see. But as I predicted before the playoffs, I said that this is going to be the series where Boston turns it up. This is going to be the series where we all realize that no matter who you're a fan of, Boston's just going to run through everybody. So as long as Boston can stay healthy, I like their chances. And that is not to spoil who I have coming out this series, but let's break it down. New York won their first round series by a total of 9 points against a young and feisty Detroit Pistons, who, by the way, great season, JB Bickerstaff. You shocked the world. But can this Knicks team go into this series and win those tough late game moments in games, game after game after game? Can they make those big time shots after shots after shots? I don't know, because of this sole reason. We saw in that Pistons series where when Tobias Harris picked up Karl-Anthony Towns in those last two games, it really made that New York offense one note, one dimensional. It was Jalen Brunson in a pick and roll with either Mitchell Robinson or Josh Hart, and it was let Jalen Brunson go to work. And occasionally, they gave the ball to McCall. They gave the ball to OG every couple possessions to do something. But we really saw Tobias Harris, who's not a great defender, zero out Karl-Anthony Towns on the offensive side of the court. If they put, let's say, Tatum or Jaylen Brown on Karl-Anthony Towns, who primarily is on the perimeter, that's going to nullify this New York offense. That's going to say, okay, Jalen Brunson, you're a great player. You're a top 5 point guard, maybe top 3. But every single possession down the court, you're going to have to beat Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, sometimes Jason Tatum, and Derek White. Every single possession. That is a tough task for anybody to, I guess, go into a series and expect them to dominate and to carry a team to 4 wins against the best team in the league. So with the fact that I've seen Tobias Harris kind of nullify Karl-Anthony Towns in this offense, and the fact that with Thibodeau, how he plays the starters, they're going to get tired, in a tough defensive series against Boston. If Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby don't take a bigger step offensively, and they're more aggressive on that side of the court, and they win the game and the series for New York, I think it's just going to be a one-man show. I think Brunson's going to have a great series as far as his numbers, but overall, I think Boston's just going to run away with the series, as we saw in the regular season. I'm going to give New York one game. Maybe they win game 4 to stay alive, but overall, I think Boston turns it up this series, and we all realize they're still the team to beat. The last series we can break down before we get Minnesota's opponents is the Thunder and the Denver Nuggets. This one was exciting. I didn't predict it to happen because, well, I thought the depth of the Clippers would be too much for the Nuggets, but here we are. This season series was split 2-2, where they went back and forth and back and forth. So they've been pretty even all year in their matchups. The obvious story and the obvious thing to expect in this matchup is heavy media coverage. Who is the real MVP, Shai or Nikola Jokic? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if before game 1 of this series, they announced that Shai is the MVP of the NBA this year. So who's that going to motivate more? Is that going to be, hey, Nikola Jokic I'm the real MVP, I'm going to go out and show it? Or is Shai going to be like, I still feel like I got stuff to prove against Jokic and to the world that I am the rightful MVP? That is going to be a battle between these two guys in this series. I do want to say a key factor, Oklahoma City is coming off 9 days rest after a playoff series where they were only tested in one of those games. And then the Nuggets, of course, 7-game series, they're only going to have about a day's rest before playing the best overall team in the NBA based on record. I think this series, it's so tough because Jokic, he always looks gassed, whether if it's the first second of the game or it's the 48th minute. Jokic always just looks overly tired, and he did. He looked overly fatigued in that entire first round against the LA Clippers, where he was playing 90% of the minutes. In this series against the Thunder, Jokic is going to have to be on the court unless we can get the role players around Jokic to step up. But I'll believe that when I see it. Jokic is going to have to play 90% of the minutes in this game, in his series. Going to have to be playing 44 minutes a night. And he's going to be tired. You got Hartenstein on him. And if it's not Hartenstein, you got Chet on him. And you know he's going to be seeing double teams, which is going to force Michael Porter to step up to the plate. Aaron Gordon to be a reliable outside shooter. The same can be said about Russell Westbrook. We know Jamal Murray's going to show up at least half of this series, give us 2 or 3 really good games, as we saw at the end of the first round. But we need explosive performances outside of Nikola Jokic. We need Michael Porter to turn it back to what he was 2 years ago and to give us these occasional 4 to 5 3-pointer nights, to give us 20-point nights, to be aggressive on the glass. And we just haven't seen that in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Aaron Gordon has been great, but can he play at that high of a level when he's got Chet guarding him? That's going to be a matchup to watch. I just think when you look at these rosters, the depth advantage, the coaching advantage goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the overall roster advantage, again, goes to the Thunder. The experience, it might be the only thing that you could say goes to the Nuggets, as well as having the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. I'll say this. I wouldn't be shocked by any single result in this series outside of an Oklahoma City getting swept. But if the Nuggets just come out into this series and with the fact that they have an experienced roster with the best player in the world, if they gentlemen swept the Oklahoma City Thunder, as crazy as it sounds, I wouldn't be shocked. But also, if the Thunder just sweep the Nuggets because they're that deep and they're that talented, I also wouldn't be shocked. I could see this series going a multitude of ways, but I've learned one thing in that first round against the Nuggets. I'm not going to underestimate Nikola Jokic. I will have this series going 7 out of respect for the best player in the world, but I will have the Thunder maybe having to shake off some rest after a long break and not really being tested in the first round. The Thunder will win this series late because of their depth and because Shea is just that talented. Because, let's be honest, the Nuggets don't have anybody to guard Shea. I'll have the Nuggets winning Game 7 at home, shaking off some rust, but still proving a point that, hey, we're actually a very dominant team and we're ready for the finals. Now, the last series we got to cover is the Timberwolves, who are hosting the Golden State Warriors. Despite being 2 underseeds, they are still advancing in the playoffs. Golden State won the season series 3-1, but again, you can't really look at the season series because Jimmy Butler was not there for the majority of them, and the old Warriors with Andrew Wiggins and company were still intact. So, Warriors, you won 3-1. It was a great series, and hey, they could not stop Stephen Curry as far as the Minnesota Timberwolves. Steph Curry had 3 straight 30 points, 8 assists, and 5 3-pointer games against the Timberwolves to end off this season series. Of course, all of those ending off in a win. Golden State, when we look at their first round series against Houston, they struggled. But when did they struggle, right? Obviously, they figured it out at the end. They struggled when Steven Adams and Sengun were on the court together with Amen Thompson. And they just struggled overall when Houston went big. Well, now the Golden State Warriors on the road in this series after a grueling 7-game series are going to have to play maybe the biggest team in the league in the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have 3 great big men there in Minnesota, so it's going to present some interesting challenges for the Warriors. But unlike Houston, in favor of Minnesota, they have a closer. You know, Houston, a lot of their stars are young. They don't have that guy and that playoff experience where they've been there, they've done that, and they're comfortable in those late game moments, and they can actually execute. Minnesota has a guy that does have all of those boxes checked. Anthony Edwards is a rising superstar, as we all know. Some would say he is the son of Michael Jordan. But Anthony Edwards, he's a monster, especially in the playoffs. And even though he's young, he's one of the best and most legendary playoff performers we have in the game today, especially at his age. When I look at these series, it's tough because Minnesota in this Anthony Edwards era has never been able to stop Stephen Curry for whatever reason. Rudy Gobert has never been able to really dominate Draymond Green with or without small ball being in a play. So it's kind of tough because on paper, and what history tells us, is that Golden State should win this series. They do have the experience, the head coaching experience and player experience advantage. They should win this series, right? But saying that you came off 7 games and the fact that this Minnesota Timberwolves team shot historically in that round one against the Lakers, if any of that resembles into the second round where they can miss maybe not 43s, but 23s in a game and still win, it's going to be hard for me to see the Warriors knocking off the Timberwolves in a 7 game series. Given the fact that they're older, I do lean in the favor of the Minnesota Timberwolves in a 7 game series at home crowd behind you. The Warriors at this point would have had to go through 14 playoff games in just 2 rounds. I would maybe lean towards the Timberwolves, but who knows, man? I'm really up in the air about this series, and I'm probably going to get this one wrong. But that's going to do it. Episode 277, second round NBA predictions. If you made it to this point, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 18,000, and we can't get there without you. But outside of that, let me know in the comments your second round predictions. Who do you have going to the Final Four?